one of the people at this facility told me, no one's going to save you. And that was so lonely that everything that I wanted out of life, that someone's going to come in and rescue me, and someone's going to validate me, and I'm going to feel like I'm home in myself again, that was never going to come. My name is Hannah Caraker. I am a master's grad student at JMU, and I use they, them pronouns. Ever since I could make words, I was singing, and I was just doing anything I could make music out of. And so my elementary school, I know sometimes up here there's band in elementary school, but mine didn't have that. And so I tried to do violin and I sucked at it. I was walking with my mom and the band is playing something cheesy like The Final Countdown. And I was like, I have to be in the band. I knew most band instruments, but I'd never sat and watched a band or learned a lot about them. And so my teacher was showing me different ones, doing a show and tell, and she had a student come in and play the euphonium because she was a flute player. And she's like, this is the euphonium, and I was like, the what? And we had 5 guys already signed on the euphonium, and I was like, well, guess there's me. And so it was a little bit of intrigue, a little bit of spite, and a little bit of just kind of finding the happy midpoint between other things that I was interested in. But I settled on euphonium, and now I'm kind of stuck with it. So. Quite honestly, it was my middle school band director. I had so much respect for her, and she ran it a little bit like a drill camp. She had such a high expectation for us, and I really respected the way she ran our program. And she was probably one of the only female directors in the county, which was something to be said for especially that time. And I was just so inspired by her. And she talks about, well, I went to Florida State and I got my undergrad and I was a teacher. And I said, well, that's what I'm going to do. I applied on voice and euphonium for every school that I went to, and it was really important to me that I got to do both. And when I was at the University of Tampa, they were willing to work with me on just about everything. So I got to sing in the chamber chorus, and then I got to do band, and through that, I was able to explore a lot more than I would at a different university. My studio teacher at the University of Tampa went here and studied with Mr. Stees. And so he would tell me all about his experience here, and I kept telling my teacher, I really want to get my doctorate, and I'm trying to build myself as a competitive candidate for these jobs. And he's like, well, I would seriously consider JMU because of just the well-rounded approach they have to both musicianship and just an education in general. And thankfully, everyone was so supportive of me doing kind of everything all the time. And because of that, I decided that JMU is where I needed to be. I got to go to the International Women's Brass Conference in my undergrad, and that was really just a surreal experience in itself. It's a very unique kind of form of musicianship and a culture there, which was really cool to have experienced then, especially after what I've experienced from 6 through 12. At the end of my sophomore year, my teacher for music history was like, hey, you seem to be really into this stuff, and not a lot of people seem to be gung-ho about music history. And so I started poking around, and I was looking for women's brass groups, women's brass soloists, 1800s, and I wanted to go back as far as I could to kind of see where that all started. And it started as the Adamless Eden Brass Band. And so I talked to my advisor at the time, and I was like, what can I do with this? And she's like, well, there is a summer undergraduate research fellowship that you can apply for, and a lot of them were doing nuclear physics research that had been the advisor's project, and then every year they would have a new student kind of act as the TA for that project, and they would apply, get funding, and then they keep working on it. I was like, I'm doing music, and I was so intrigued that they're also fascinated by that because it seemed so different than what they were doing. I wanted to help bring that story to life, but also even in some small way be able to create or at least re-enliven some of those mentors that were lost to time. And so I got to go to London over the summer, and I spent about 3 weeks in the city. And my advisor went with me for the first part of it, but then she had to fly over to Germany for a conference. So I got a little bit, and then she just threw me in the deep end. I found so much more than I thought I would, that those 4 different documents ended up being the exact same thing, but one was teeny, one was bigger, one was double-sided, and so I ended up doing more research there, and as soon as I'd find one thing, something else would pop up, and then I'd go back and have a whole stack of papers on my desk and taking pictures all the way through, but I found pieces of music that she composed for her ensemble that like had never been recorded anywhere, which I wouldn't have known until I got to London and I was able to see the first one, because then I found a name and then I found another project. I identify as lesbian and non-binary, so that's why I use they, them pronouns. And I think in a sense it affects everything and also very little at the same time. It affected me a lot as I transitioned into that identity, because really up until undergrad I identified as straight and cisgender, and so that was a really huge personal shift for me to kind of reconcile with who I am. And then secondary to that, how do I want to present myself and exist in a world where I'd previously existed in a completely different way and I was perceived in a very different way. And I try not to focus on that as a huge part of what my career might look like, but I think it's always something to consider, especially in this day and age and what our country is doing right now. I know the first day that Trump took office, they declared that there's only men and women in this country. And I truly don't know if it's worse to be hated or disliked or just completely erased. How I identify, it affects me deeply, but truly it doesn't affect anyone else around me beyond, could you please use they instead of she or he. I think I didn't really understand the disparity between men and women at a young age. Like, I just really never truly understood it. I was always that person that was like, if we need strong guys to carry chairs, I was grabbing stuff. Like, I didn't really care about that. I was always playing the hero, and I played make-believe as a kid. Like, I didn't really think about that, and I was always trying to push against the status quo or whatever that was set for young ladies at the time. Even just searching for master's programs, I tried to think about the city that I was in. And I asked my teacher, I was like, how safe am I gonna be here? Like, is it gonna be like a constant reminder that like I'm a little uncomfortable when I go into town, or is it okay? And he told me, he's like, the culture of the school is great. Like, you're never gonna feel unwelcome or nervous to be just existing in town. He's like, I will warn you that like maybe if you go out, you're gonna wanna pay attention to what gas station you go to, but other than that, like, you're gonna be okay. I really didn't truly understand a constant uncomfortability with certain things, or just having to think about how I'm going to approach certain situations until I cut my hair and I changed my clothes and I changed my pronouns. I am paying a lot of attention to mostly where I'm going to live or where I'm going to kind of settle down. And so my family lives in Florida, and they're like, well, are you gonna come back? And there's no way I'm going to teach in Florida. Like, in my county, they've been trying to push legislation for years that makes teachers mandatory reporters to parents if their student is like, hey, I'd like to go by a different name, or hey, I want to use different pronouns. And I would never put my students in that kind of position. And if it's a fireable offense, why would I take a job there if I'm just going to get fired for trying to stick up for kids? I know there's not a lot of women that are college band directors, especially at bigger, larger universities. There's none that I know of that are non-binary. But who knows, maybe there'll be a first in that, and it might take a little bit longer, but I'm pretty determined to get there. I was really searching for that kind of representation, or just someone that I could latch on to really take guidance from and have as a mentor. And I met Dr. V when she played in the Tampa brass band. Instantly I was just like, oh my God, like, she plays tuba, euphonium, she has hair like me, she has a wife. Like, that's not like the biggest part of her life, but simultaneously it was so nice to see my reflection somewhere that I had never seen. I thought so deeply about how I presented, what I did, how I talked, because it elicited a more positive response from people. And so I told myself, you're gonna work so hard and you're gonna do all this, and it's gonna feel great because you're gonna get to college and you can relax and everything's going to align and it's all gonna make sense because you've made it. And I realized I hated it. Like, I wanted to be there, but I was miserable every night. And I didn't know why. I really started to ruminate on all of that and just keep telling myself, like, what about me isn't good enough then? And I was just so uncomfortable where I was in school with my friends that I had, how I looked, and I started to obsess over that. And I started to get really sick, and I developed a very bad eating disorder. I was not taking care of myself, and at the heart of it, I just was trying to disappear from who I was. I just hit a breaking point. I called my parents and was like, I can't do this. Like, I have to figure something else out. And so I entered a partial hospitalization program. I started to unpack what I really wanted to get back. And it took a really, really long time of both physically coming back and feeling more stable, and then slowly coming back and integrating in my life what I wanted. And music was at the heart of all of that, as corny as that might sound. But I started to realize, I was like, God, I hate the way I feel in these clothes, and it's not really the clothes, it's just they don't fit who I am. And then I started to realize, God, I hate the way my hair looks. I don't. And it seems so trivial that it's just how I look, but at the heart of it, I felt like I was wearing this costume of who I was. One of the hardest things I had to settle with was one of the people at this facility told me, no one's going to save you. And that was so lonely that everything that I wanted out of life, that someone's going to come in and rescue me, and someone's going to validate me, and I'm going to feel like I'm home in myself again, that was never going to come. That was really hard to get told, but I think that was the best advice or statement really that anyone could have given me, that no one is coming, and that the happiness and success and fulfillment that you want out of life is never going to come from someone giving it to you. Through that, I found such a freedom that, you know what, cut my hair, you know what, wear these clothes. And I got so much pushback from friends and my family a lot, that they weren't ready for that shift. They were not ready to hear that I didn't want to date guys. And that was also really hard to go through. But as lonely of a road that it's been probably the happiest that I've ever been. That there's such a fulfillment that comes through that struggle, and knowing that it's all self-made, and that if something else falls, I still have this foundation of, now that I know who I am, no one can take that from me.
Thank you. Thank you for sitting down with us. I really appreciate it.
Of course, yeah.
Thank you.